Well, I have chased halfway around the world, or pretty much halfway around the world, and I've finally tracked him down. It's Warren Redlich, who hasn't been on my show for how long? Oh my gosh.
I
Actually,
don't know.
Warren, I was leaving you alone for a while. I knew you had other things on your mind. I don't know what exactly, but something to do with wives and babies. I don't know, but so
Chasing women. Yep.
so I'm glad to see that you're apparently in Bangkok, Thailand now, maybe settled there for a little while. And
I am in the process of getting, or working on the process of getting a long-term visa. I do have a girlfriend who I hope will potentially become something like a wife or mother and all that. That's, early stages of that. And I think I'm getting closer and closer to starting up the Podcar project as well.
oh my goodness, oh maybe we should talk about that one in a separate meeting.
Sure.
All right. Well, listen, you and I talked before in the green room. We talked about all the things that you're passionate about right now. And one of your passions, apparently, and I've seen a couple of postings on X about this, you have some theories and some ideas about the next gen vehicle, where I would say right now, my impression was, okay, Elon says they're going to do it second half of next year. Most people would say, okay, make that 2026. I'm thinking, they're sandbagging. You think completely different than anybody. So, which is not unusual. What is your theory about the next gen vehicle that we're not paying
Well,
attention
it's what they said in the earnings call that people pick up certain things in earnings calls and they don't pick up other things, so that people freaked out. And I freaked out a little bit myself about it. Sounds like they're not going to start producing next gen vehicle until second half of 2026, and that's second half of 2025, which was a big surprise to me.
to?
But
Right.
it was one of the other things they mentioned during that that really stood out to me was it's not really just about the vehicle. It's about the manufacturing process of the vehicle, and it's not just the unboxed process. They literally said they're designing the machines that are going to build the cars. The most auto industry manufacturing, and probably a lot of other manufacturing, is done with sort of standard industry robots. And it what I heard, and I may have misheard, but I'm pretty confident what I heard, is that they are redesigning not just the process by which vehicles are built, but they're redesigning the machines that build the vehicles. So they're not going to be using off-the-shelf industrial robots. They're designing entirely new robots. And I don't mean Optimus. I
Right.
mean large-scale industrial machines for the specific manufacturing process they're coming up with. And I think by doing that, and so that the reason it's taking a long time is because they're not only engineering a vehicle, they're engineering the machines that build the vehicle. And they may be engineering the machines that build the machines that build the vehicle. And there's a lot of feedback. I would call it a duality. When you're designing the vehicle, you got to think about, okay, how are we going to manufacture this? And then when you're thinking about how we're going to manufacture this, that might change how you build the vehicle.
Right.
Like, all right, how are we doing this process? Okay, well, what does that mean for what vehicle we're building? And the nature of the vehicle itself might change as a result of, because you want to manufacture in large volume. And one of the things I keep hearing people saying, and I can't say they're wrong, but I keep hearing people referring to it as a $25,000 car.
Right.
And I think they're wrong. I think it's a less than $20,000 car. Drew Baglino said maybe it was master plan, maybe it was an earlier earnings call. They were talking about the next gen vehicle, and Drew said half the footprint, half the cost, twice the volume. Well, half the footprint's pretty understandable. The factory will be half the size of an existing factory, twice the volume. It'll produce twice as many cars as an existing factory. So you're getting 4 times as much volume per square foot or per cubic foot, depending on how you define the size. Well, footprint's square foot, but half the cost. Well, I believe they're selling Model 3s in some places, at least, for less than $40,000.
Oh yeah.
And I believe they can sell Model 3 for less than $40,000, which means at half the cost, they should be able to sell the next generation vehicle for less than $20,000 because half the cost.
Right.
And when I look at what they need to achieve in volume, the Model Y appears to, probably can't sell more than 2 million Model Ys a year. Maybe I'm underestimating a little bit, but the ceiling for Model Y at its current price point of, let's say, $40,000 for the vehicle, or maybe it's a little more than that. The ceiling for total volume that you can deliver Model Y is probably around 2 million a year. Maybe you can do a little bit more than that.
Right.
I don't see in my dreams, I'll get to 3 million a year with Model Y.
Right.
Right. And Model 3 is nowhere close to 1 million a year, but maybe they could get Model 3 to 1 million a year if everything went right. But the next gen vehicle, if you want to get to 20 million vehicles a year, well, let's say you get 4 million out of 3 and Y, you're not getting meaningful volume out of S and X. In your dreams, you get 1 million out of Cybertruck.
Right.
Maybe you get 2 million out of a van, which we'll talk about later, I think.
Mhm.
The next gen vehicle's got to be close to 10 million vehicles a year. Well, what price point do you have to hit to get to 10 million vehicles? And I don't think 25,000 will do it.
Well,
I think
but won't half of those be robotaxi specific?
if you go to a world where you're making robo-taxis for Tesla's own fleet or for fleet buyers, it changes the game.
Right.
If the idea is you're running a robo-taxi fleet and people are not buying a car anymore, they're paying for a ride, then that changes the game completely, for sure. And I hope we get there. I'm fairly confident we will get there in time. But when they talked about making 20 million vehicles a year in the past, I think generally that's been a for sale to consumers concept. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think they've ever said it that way. I think if you're making vehicles for the purpose of selling to customers, because a really large chunk of the global market is vehicles that are smaller than a Toyota Corolla. The K car, KEI, the K cars in Japan, the Tata Nano style cars. I'm not saying Tata Nano itself, but that style of car in India. There's these micro cars that are like in Japan, the K cars have a maximum engine size of 660 cc's. And there's these small boxy vehicles. They're boxy because there's the size limitation is length, width, height. So they fill the length, width, height. They basically make them a big rectangular box because that fits the limits, so you can maximize the volume and what's allowed. And that market, I don't think a $25,000 vehicle that's the size of a Corolla or larger, or maybe it's a small RAV4 or a Honda CRV or something like that. I don't think that's going to sell in enough volume. But if you bring the price point down to sub $20,000 and then leave aside the tax credit, because the tax credit only applies in the United States.
Right.
The cost savings by the energy efficiency and maybe some other, and the maintenance efficiencies, maybe that's enough that you can sell it in higher volume. But there's a lot of places in the world where $10,000 is sort of like a very common price point. So to sell a $20,000 vehicle to people who are used to paying $10,000 is a heavy lift. So I don't know if there's a future vehicle program way down the road after next gen vehicle where they're making a vehicle for $10,000 or $13,000. Maybe that's coming. But anyway, back to the point, the big issue with the next gen vehicle is, if I'm correct, that they're doing a lot more than unbox process. There's a lot more going on than unbox process in this manufacturing. That's why it's going to take so long to start manufacturing this, because they're redesigning the machines to build the machines, and they're probably planning on making a lot of them, right? Because they're going to have multiple lines,
right?
And they're going to have multiple factories, and they're going to have Texas and Mexico and Shanghai most likely, and Berlin pretty obviously, and then I'm a big fan of the Giga Bangkok concept. I think there's a potential market and a large enough market for it in Japan. Maybe it's India. There's a lot of places where you could build it. If you're going to build 10 million a year,
you got to build everywhere.
And each factory does 1 million units, you need 10 factories. I think they've said they may conceivably produce 2 million in some of the factories, but they may produce 500,000 in other factories. So you need in the ballpark of 10 factories. So 10 locations. So where are they? So yeah, I think that's the thing that people didn't get. That's the thing they didn't get in that bit, was that they're not just engineering a new vehicle. There's the Barry, I call him Barry Glack, Gary Black, the Barry Glacks of the world, the Lost Gerbers. Ross Gerber. There's these people like, oh, Elon needs to get going on the next gen vehicles. Like, you don't understand. it's not just a car. It's an entire manufacturing process that they're re-engineering.
Right. And a platform which will include multiple kinds of cars. Um,
Yes, I think that there's going to be an SUV that is going to be the dominant player. There's going to be a robo-taxi version, although there's open questions about when the robo-taxi version actually, when does
right.
robo-taxi become viable? I'm still a believer it could happen any day. Not that robo-taxi, that FSD will cross the threshold any day.
Right.
It could be this year, it could be next year, it could be 5 years from now. I think it's all a question of getting more data, throwing more compute at the problem, and we don't know when it crosses that threshold.
Right.
We don't know what it takes because AI improves so fast, it's hard to get a sense. And we don't really know how much it needs to go from here to there. We don't know what's left.
They may not even know. It seems that the engineers even are surprised because one day it just happens.
Well, people were surprised by what ChatGPT was able to do. People have been surprised by what generative AI has been able to do. I've been creating images lately. I've been just fooling around the last couple of days with Midjourney and DALL-E, and I'm like, this stuff's and now I don't know if you saw OpenAI's thing about Sora.
Zora, what's it called?
Sora, Sora. They've got some new video generators. Like, wow. I've used Runway ML, and that's pretty cool, but Sora looks like next level.
Yeah.
I mean, like really, really like big step up from what Runway ML does, and Runway ML is already pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, there's like been this whole conversation going on. I'm not sure if you've heard about this. There's this whole conversation going on with YouTube creators. I'm friends with some people who make videos on YouTube, and there are YouTube creators now who are having AI write their script, having AI voice their script, and they are, running generic video content, the classic Rob Mauer run Tesla videos, and people can't really tell.
Yeah.
And it's funny, one of my friends said he got a comment, that he thought that the person thought his video was AI generated. It's like, no, it isn't. Like, people can't tell the difference.
That was the limiting factor, right? The limiting factor.
Yes.
He said in the comments like, come on, this is all generated. Yeah. And he's like,
no, when he and I were talking, I said, it's pretty clear that AI is going to generate better videos than us soon. But what won't they be able to do? Well, they probably won't be able to do these conversations like you and I are doing. But the big one they won't be able to do is live streams. Right? We're going to be able to live stream, and it's going to be a long time before the AI. They can sure, generate video, and in 3 hours they may be able to generate like a 20-minute video or 1 hour video or something. I don't know how long it'll take to generate that kind of video, but they won't be able to do it in real time. They won't be able to respond to video chat in real time.
Right.
They will, but that's a few years away. So we still have an edge. Yeah.
So back to the Gen 3, I'm thinking a small truck. I'm a really small truck, like you see them in the United States, but you really see them in South America, etc. And I was thinking they'll probably need maybe some kind of I don't want to call it a station wagon, but a van type of product on that level, a small.
I think like a Ford Transit van.
Yeah.
There's people are very familiar with the large boxy vans that are very commonly used, but there's also a pretty big market for these smaller vans.
Right.
And I think you could build a smaller van on the platform. Until you just said it, I hadn't thought about it. Could they build a pickup truck on the platform? Because Thailand, people don't know this, Thailand is the world's second largest market for pickups.
Really interesting.
They're everywhere here. They're Ford Ranger sized, what are called quarter-ton pickups instead of half-ton pickups. Even though the quarter-ton, half-ton designation is like basically meaningless now. The meaning is basically an F-150 is half-ton and a Ranger is quarter-ton. So the Ford Ranger is the 5th largest selling vehicle in the Thai market.
Wow.
And the top 2 are the Isuzu D-Max pickup and the Toyota Hilux pickup. So pickup trucks are very popular here. It's something like 800,000 units a year in Thailand alone.
Wow.
And Malaysia also has a large market. So there's a large market for pickups. And I was thinking Tesla makes a Wolverine, smaller version of Cybertruck for Bangkok, for Thailand and Malaysia. And I think maybe Indonesia uses them too. Australia certainly uses them. And now I'm like, when you just said that, I'm like, well, maybe the next gen vehicle, they could make a pickup version, which my gut would be kind of small. compared to, a Ford Ranger?
Huh?
Maybe. Maybe they could make it reasonably close to what the Ford Ranger is
Right.
and sell that. And maybe that would sell better than, and it'd certainly be lower cost to manufacture than a Cybertruck.
Right.
The Cybertruck would have a huge advantage in markets like this because, the traffic is a little bit more urban combat than
Yeah.
the American market. So having stainless steel body would be a big plus. But, I think maybe engineering that for the Thai market, maybe the price point would be too high and maybe it doesn't work. And I could see it. If you could make a next gen vehicle work that does half of what the pickups trucks here do, I could sell in massive volume.
Well, and of course, the way to get the price down, the number one way to get the price down is get the battery price down. And in these markets that you're talking about, you don't need as powerful a battery. You may not care whether it gets 1,000,000 miles or not. That may not be, on the battery. You might be able to. So there's a lot of ways that, first of all, the battery prices will be coming down anyway. And then you have these ways that you can make it smaller, or maybe it's a slightly less quality battery. That raises the whole issue of what is going on with 4680s. And I know you have some comments and thoughts on that as well. So,
Just really quick, I
right.
think the vehicles in the Thai market will be primarily lithium iron phosphate, which price is already pretty low. And the price of lithium iron phosphate batteries, at least in China, has been falling. I think battery prices in general have been falling lately.
Lots.
They'll probably come back, but for now the price of batteries is falling, so I don't think that's going to be a big hurdle. But sorry, you were asking about 4680. So, Drew said in the earnings call, Drew Baglino, sorry, the number two, well, the guy I call the number two guy at Tesla. He was on the stage at Battery Day. He's on the stage at Investor Day with Elon. I think I would say he's the backup CEO for Tesla if he's not already effectively. He runs a lot of the company. He runs superchargers. He runs battery production. He's big. He knows almost the entire company. I don't know how much he does with AI, right? But he's really deeply in tune with the whole company. And Drew was talking about 4680, and there was a 4680 question. And sorry, I realize there's another topic we could talk about is Tesla insurance, if you want to add that to the list of things we talk about. But Drew was talking about 4680. There was a question about 4680. He says, I'm hearing a lot of people saying that that the 4680 production is holding up Cybertruck. And he said, no, it's the opposite. 4680 is we're overproducing 4680. We're way ahead of, I don't know if he said way ahead, we're ahead of Cybertruck's ramp on 4680. We are storing cells for future vehicle programs. It's like, what? Wait, what programs plural? So it's more than the van, right? So there's been a lot of good news about 4680 and people just don't hear it. If you follow Jordan Limiting Factor, I think he just posted a video about asymmetric something or other. Jordan talks about 4680 quite a bit. I think he just made a projection, maybe it was in his latest video, about where 4680 is going. There's a lot of progress with 4680. And it's just a matter of, being patient and recognizing that the full scale of 4680 won't be realized until 2026. But where they are with Cybercell now is pretty good. The cell for Cybertruck, I believe they have one line. They're converting a second line that was doing the older generation cell. That one is being converted or is already converted over to Cybercell. They're adding 2 more lines after that, and then there's 4 more lines coming after that. So then they're building Nevada,
Right.
and they're going to build more cells in Nevada. So there's a lot of 4680 happening, and it's just people are impatient. It really leads into the topic I wanted to talk to you about, which is the smarter than Elon diseases. But I don't know if you want to go there yet. Did I answer your question about 4680?
Yeah. So I guess, nobody really knows. We haven't had any real information for quite a while now on what they're producing in 4680s. My speculation, based on connecting the dots, not on the program connecting the dots, but my own connecting the dots. The best that I could tell, maybe they thought that they would be fully ramped on the 4 lines by sometime in the 3rd quarter, and then they would be starting to put up the other 4 lines. But that seems maybe to be a stretch right now, but I'm not sure.
No, I would say 4th quarter, they should be ramping. They should be fully ramped on the first 2 lines and ramping the 3rd and 4th line. And then the next 4 lines, I think, are next year, are 2025.
Yeah, they said they would have them installed by the end of the year. So
yeah, and then then you have the Nevada
Yeah.
factory where they're going to be building another maybe 8 lines.
Right.
So there's a lot of progress happening. It's just a matter of, and there's a whole bunch of things going on. They've got their lithium refining factory that's underway in Corpus Christi. And people are like, Tesla's not doing anything. It's like, well, they've got a lithium refining factory. How many other car companies have a lithium refinery?
Or a
Right.
dry coated cathode
Yeah.
factory.
How many other ones have a cathode facility? How many others are making their own batteries? I mean, Tesla's doing a ton of stuff,
Yep.
and people don't grasp how important that is. And I don't suffer from smarter than Elon diseases. I don't think I'm smarter than Drew. I disagree with them occasionally, or I think what they say doesn't fit with how I see things. And when I say that, I'm like, well, they probably know more than I do, and they probably have a reason for that. From where I'm sitting, like that doesn't make sense to me, but
Right.
so, but I really feel like, I don't know if you want to talk about, sorry, did we finish it? So the other thing I want to mention about 4680 that people don't talk about is there's this open question about lithium iron phosphate that, some batteries are nickel based cathode and some batteries are iron cathode, and iron cathode is fundamentally less expensive because the materials in the battery are less expensive.
Right.
Because iron and phosphate are less expensive than
Nickel,
nickel, manganese, cobalt, and whatever goes in the anode. I guess it's graphite or something. Yeah, I'm not sure. Phosphate. I'm not sure if the phosphate's the anode. Whatever. Fundamentally the materials in a lithium iron phosphate battery are less expensive than the materials in a nickel-based battery. So is the plan to get a high volume of lithium iron phosphate cells in the current most common format, which is prismatic, a rectangular box? Or is there some plan to start making lithium iron phosphate cells in a 4680 format,
right.
which is a cylindrical cell that's 46 millimeters in diameter and 80 millimeters in height? Maybe there's plans to build 4680 lithium iron phosphate batteries. I don't know. I don't know if it's necessary. I know Drew, my recollection is that Drew Baglino poo-pooed the idea of 4680 LFP.
Oh.
Not for a particular, I think it was just sort of like, that's not really necessary. Not that it's not useful, not that somebody wouldn't use it, but
Right.
I didn't think that was a priority for them.
Hmm.
I think they feel like the prismatic form of LFP is good enough, or like the blade battery from BYD is good enough. They have some version of a lithium iron phosphate that's appropriate for structural battery pack. So but there's an open question. Will we see lithium? I actually, I think the open question is Tesla going to manufacture lithium iron phosphate batteries in the US?
I think, I think there's a third chemistry as well. My suspicion is that they're working on multiple chemistry concepts for 4680, probably up in Fremont.
Yes. Well, Fremont is working on the next generation cell, and the other chemistry is basically a version of iron phosphate that incorporates manganese.
Right.
It's LMFP or something like that. It's iron with some manganese in there, and that increases the energy density.
Right.
But I'm not aware of any plans by Tesla to manufacture lithium iron phosphate themselves. I've heard that there are some companies that are working on lithium iron phosphate factories in the US. If you want to get the tax credit, there's like these huge tax credits for batteries built in the US. And I think if you get lithium iron phosphate built to scale in the US, the tax credit may be larger than the cost of the battery.
Yeah, we've been talking about that for a while, that we would have free batteries.
It's on the edge of free. I mean, I think, optimistically, you get lithium iron phosphate down to like $40, $50 a kilowatt hour, and the tax credit is $35 a kilowatt hour.
Plus the pack credit for another 10. So
the pack credit is the pack credit. I don't know whether the cost of making the pack is $10 a kilowatt hour or not. That's an interesting question. So if you got $45 a kilowatt hour worth of pack, and then the pack doesn't cost that much to assemble, then yeah, you're getting close to free. So it would make, and because a lot of the lithium, I think all the lithium iron phosphate batteries are made in China and they're not eligible for the tax credit. A vehicle that's made with lithium iron phosphate is not eligible for the $7,500 tax credit. Right. There's a whole bunch of reasons to make, under current law, there's a whole bunch of reasons to make lithium iron phosphate cells, at least in North America, whether it's in the US or not. And I just don't see, I'm surprised that we're not seeing more towards building lithium iron phosphate battery. I don't think the technology is that complicated.
Right.
I think that technology has been around for a long time. So I'm surprised that Tesla isn't doing it. And I guess I would say it wouldn't surprise me if we found out they are doing it.
Yeah, yeah. That I've kind of in my thinking about the future of their battery business, I think that they're working on. They have said that they are chemistry agnostic on the 4680. So even though they haven't said anything about what they might be going forward towards, but they definitely are not averse to doing other chemistries in the 4680.
I
That's
didn't hear I didn't hear them say what you just said, but I agree they haven't said they wouldn't do it. I heard them say that the next gen vehicle's battery agnostic.
Yeah, no, in addition, they've said that the 4680, there's no reason not to make it in other chemistries.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's right. And I have to believe that they're working on all the potential chemistries they can think of, because you have to be able to disrupt yourself. So
Yeah.
they may be working on chemistries,
Yeah.
that we're not even aware of.
Yeah.
Um,
Can we talk about smarter than Elon diseases? Because I'm feeling the bug. Like I
you're
really
feeling
am.
the bug. You just hit, you want to talk about smarter than Elon. Okay, go for it.
I've been hinting at it a couple of times already, and it's just so there's a lot of people out there on X in particular who've been following Tesla, following Elon, whatever, and there's this growing chorus of people who are saying things that basically suggest that, Elon's distracted, Elon doesn't know what he's doing, the Tesla isn't executing, they're not performing as well as they should be, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, I don't know how these people know any of that. As far as I can tell, Tesla's the only car company making batteries. Except for BYD.
Right,
Sorry.
right,
They're the only American car company or European car company, whatever, making their own batteries. They are developing robots. I feel like what people are missing is that Elon has said it. Tesla is an AI and robotics company.
right,
The cars are not cars; they're robots. They're
right,
robots on four wheels.
right.
And Optimus is coming, and those of us who get it see that the long-term value in Tesla is not making more cars. Not that making more cars is bad, and there's some value in that, but the real long-term value in Tesla is developing self-driving, so you get to a robo-taxi network, which is easily a 25x in the market cap.
Yep.
And then Optimus, which is another 10x or more on top of that. And Tesla sees it,
Mhm.
right? And they've explained it, and I think the people who get it get it. I think the Jason DeBolts of the world and the James Daumas of the world get it.
Mhm.
And then there's all these people who are like, well, I thought they were going to make more cars this year. It's like, but that's not the point. And I just feel like I keep seeing people like, oh, Tesla needs to advertise, Elon doesn't know what he's doing. Right, but you do, and at the same time, like we could talk about Tesla insurance. I feel like, Tesla insurance is way behind where it's supposed to be. And one of the purposes of Tesla insurance is to lower the total cost of ownership, which makes the cars more attractive to buy.
Right.
And all these talking heads that are smarter than Elon are not saying anything because they're addicted. That Tesla needs to advertise. They have their shtick. They have their agenda or their narrative, and the failure to deliver Tesla insurance in a timely manner doesn't fit their narrative, so they don't talk about it, or they haven't noticed,
And it's
right?
not sexy. It's not nearly as sexy.
Well,
So,
advertising isn't sexy, and get the next generation car built faster or get Cybertruck built faster. That's not sexy. Or, there, there's all these people saying Cybertruck's a miss because the Cyber Beast version doesn't have 500 miles of range. It's like, well, the all-wheel drive version over delivered on range, and four-wheel steering was not in the original plan, and
yes,
the
yes.
48-volt wiring is like a major game changer. And um like there's all these people returning their Apple Vision Pros. Have people been returning their Cybertrucks?
No,
I haven't heard anybody returning their Cybertruck.
no,
You know,
quite the
uh,
opposite.
yeah, there's high demand, and I think Kim Kardashian posted a photo of her Cybertruck near her jet or something, and was it Snoop Dogg is like, "Hey Elon, when am I getting my Cybertruck?" or something. There, there there's a lot of demand.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good stuff happening. There's just a great video with Lars Moravi, and that's another thing. the smarter than Elon disease people think that Elon runs the whole company and there's nobody else there. And like
Right.
nobody would get anything done if Elon wasn't like isn't cracking the whip. And I think it's a massive insult to Lars and Drew and Ashok and so many people on the Tesla team who are doing great work. I just saw somebody today trashing Martin Viecha. I'm like, oh, Tesla's investor relations department is poorly run. I'm like, it's not run nearly as well as all these. Like, what other companies are you watching? What are you talking about? How many other companies are using Say Technologies to get questions from shareholders? Right? You know, does
I
GM do that? Does
yeah.
does does Ford do that?
So I think you would even agree with me that it's okay to put up your ideas. It's okay to say, I think they should advertise. It's okay to say, I think they need a PR department. It's okay to even give all your reasons why you think that those things are appropriate. It's a whole nother thing to say that they're idiots at Tesla because they're not doing it. I mean, there's a way to approach it. If I want to come into the room and talk about brainstorming about the reasons for, that's one thing. If I want to come in and say, what's wrong with these people that they just don't understand? My process on the advertising and PR department was December of last year, January of last year, I was all for an advertising department because we could see the slowdown in terms of what was happening out there. Then when they started dropping the prices, I was quick to switch my position. I mean, I did a video on switching my position because I was like, yeah, you know what? If we can get the price down to where it's the sticker is actually the same as the sticker of the so-called equivalent car, this is going to make it a no-brainer. I have now switched back and I've made quite a show of it that I've switched back and believe that, great, now you have a sticker that's the same as an equivalent car, but nobody knows it, you know? And, I think Tesla knows that. I think Elon knows it. He even made a comment yesterday on a video that made that statement that we need to educate people to the fact that there is a equivalency now in terms of the sticker price. And I guarantee you, I could call my cousins in the Midwest and they would not know that you could buy a Tesla for under $40,000. They just wouldn't know.
Are your customers considering buying an EV?
No, my
Are,
cousins, my
are your
cousins.
cousin are your cousins would your cousins consider buying an EV?
I think that anybody who takes a look, takes
No,
five,
no, 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 not anybody takes a look.
okay,
If
well,
your cousins
50%,
if your
50%.
cousins if you no 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 without anything else, if your cousins knew that you could buy a Tesla for $40,000, would they buy one?
Yeah, pretty sure. Because it's a practical matter. Midwesterners are practical people.
Do they,
Conservatives are
do
practical.
they are they aware of the practical value of a Tesla?
Well, that's the second thing they need to be made aware of. The two things are
What
range,
about the safe? What about the
cost
safety?
savings, cost, huh?
No, no.
Safety.
There's a large number of things they need. I'm gonna say this. So
Yeah.
first of all, let me just say this. What sells Teslas? Okay, the thing that gets people over the hump is not a TV ad. You don't do there's no such thing as an I struggle to think of the successful educational advertising campaign that's ever been done for any product ever. I'm not saying it's never happened, but it's rare. They're
Some Apple commercial.
Advertising is generally branding. Like you repeat your brand name a lot. You mention some feature of the product, but you have some actor or some actress or some girl in a bikini and that and you're building your brand, right? That's what most of advertising is. Tesla's brand is already well established. And then, how do you get people aware of different things? There's too many different things to get them aware of. But what really sells cars is your neighbor gets one.
Mhm.
And then your cousin gets one. And then another neighbor gets one. And all of a sudden there's 3 Teslas in the neighborhood, and you're like, let me go ask Bob, why did he buy that thing? I thought those things, blew up, caught fire. Are you comfortable parking that in your garage? And Bob's like, what are you talking about? These things catch fire. Gas cars catch fire 10 times as much as electric cars. Bob straightens him out, right? And I was like, hey, let me take you for a drive in it. I'm like, wow, this is pretty nice. Hey, it's kind of quiet. Wow, that's acceleration is pretty amazing. That's what gets people over the hump is their friend buys one, their neighbor buys one. People don't buy cars because they saw an ad on TV. That's not how it works. Especially when you have this game-changing product. And Tesla is advertising. This is the other one. Tesla should have done a Super Bowl ad. So the people who are advocating this stuff probably have never bought an ad. But I mean the Barry Glacks of the world, the James Katz, whoever, the Lost Gerbers, they've never bought an advertisement. They don't understand. I bought advertisement. You have to figure out what's our return on investment for the ad.
Mhm.
And Tesla's realized that. And so they're testing different ads in different contexts to see which of these ads is working in a meaningful way to where we can justify spending a lot of money on this path. And what if it works in a meaningful way on a small scale, that doesn't mean it'll work in a meaningful way in a large scale. So they're trying to figure out, all right, does Google search work? Do YouTube ads work? Do ads on X work? They're trying a bunch of different platforms. But Super Bowl ads, are primarily used to build the brand. And the brand is already there. We saw that when the other car companies ran EV ads and people started searching for Tesla on Google, right? Because Tesla's brand is already well established. And there is a problem that what some people call the mainstream media, and I think we're now calling the government run or state run media, has been trashing Tesla, nonstop for a while. And there's a large share of the population that watches Fox News or MSNBC or whatever, NBC News, and they believe the lies that they're told.
Mhm.
And that share of the population is shrinking, and the share of the population that's getting their news on X is growing. But it's hard to convert people who've been told for years that battery electric vehicles catch fire and don't run in the cold. Like, something like 80% of new vehicles sold in Norway are electric vehicles, but apparently EVs don't work in the cold. You can't fix stupid, but the media keeps doing it, and they're probably being paid to do it. But that's just the cold hard reality, and it's hard to overcome that. But spending $7 million in an ad is not going to overcome $1 billion worth of negative publicity from lamestream media. It's not that easy.
So this is pretty much all I've done my whole life is buy ads. It's
Yeah.
not true. I'm a marketing guy. That's what I do.
Yeah.
I'm a sales and marketing guy, and I've done it across the world. I've advertised in Europe. I've advertised in Australia. I haven't ever advertised in China, but I've done trade shows in China. So that's a form of advertising. So I know the advertising game pretty well. I've owned an advertising agency, and for the last 16 years, I've been a marketing consultant to over 400 companies in all kinds of fields. So I know a little bit about how to advertise in the
More
old
than me.
in the old style, the traditional, print and all of that, bus bench ads, whatever it happens to be. I've never done TV, tell you right now, but I've done radio. And I know all the new stuff. I know I'm an expert on Google My Business placements and all the rest of it. So I know a little bit about this stuff. And yes, of course, you're always trying to work on your brand, but that doesn't mean that you can't go out with your specific proposition at the moment and drive lots of eyeballs and lots of purchases. And so you can go on the Super Bowl, for instance. You may not want to go nationally the first time. You go regionally. And you go regionally and you give it a try, or you do it in just a regular, Monday Night Football or during a sitcom. You figure out which kind of product is out there, which kind of media that you want to advertise on based on your demographics that you're trying to reach, and where you can now uniquely spot it, where you want to go with it. And you go out and you give it some tries. And right now, I would be talking all about a $259 lease. That's all I'd be talking about. I wouldn't be talking about the safety. I wouldn't be talking about the acceleration. I'd be talking $259 lease, and you'll probably save $100 a month on gas. Now you're down to 159 in your pocket. I mean, 159 outlay for a brand new state-of-the-art vehicle. That's where I would be going. But maybe that's what they're doing on their YouTube ads. Maybe that's what they're doing on their X ads. But somehow, yes, you can definitely drive people to make purchases based on a specific advertising idea at the moment. You're also advertising your brand at the same time, but you can definitely get people to make it. And by the way, email is it's the number one way that people want to be sold. And Tesla is using email.
I get them.
Yeah.
No, and I think the key distinction that people may not be aware of is, because I did a lot of advertising on Google search. If somebody sees my ad on Google search and they click on it, it brings them to my website. Most companies that are doing this are tracking whether they make a purchase or not, and they can track it back to the ad.
Right.
So you have a much, but you can't, it's harder to do that with TV and radio and
Not,
and
yeah,
bus sites.
it's
It's not
still,
impossible, but it's harder to track. You can't track the individual sale
right.
to the ad, but you can say, well, we did this ad at this time slot, and we like if you did a Super Bowl ad and you saw a surge of internet traffic. But there's another issue that somebody brought up that I hadn't thought of before, which is even when you generate business, when you generate transactions, you don't know what percentage of those transactions were going to buy a car anyway, and you just pulled them forward 6 weeks. They may,
It's always a possibility, but that doesn't hurt if you're talking about word of mouth, because if I can get some seats and butts 6 weeks earlier, that's 6 weeks sooner that they're talking to their neighbor. So
yeah,
by the way, I agree with you. Word of mouth, I can tell you a million stories. Word of mouth is the best way that you're ever going to advertise. It's always going to be the best. It is a much higher, uh, what do you want to call it, conversion rate than anything else you can do. Word of mouth. So that's it. But you got to get, I can tell you about a million products, well, a million, probably at least 1,000 products that I've been involved with in my career where you can't get any word of mouth because you can't get the first one sold. So
right.
you've got to get some of them out there. And in some
Yeah,
markets right now, there are none of them out there. I mean, there's just no
right.
meaningful numbers of Teslas in some marketplaces in the United States. My whole statement on this has been get the great flyover states. Everything between California and Florida is not buying Teslas in big enough numbers. So concentrate your advertising budget there. Maybe it only takes 6 months, maybe it only takes 9 months, but get that advertising done in those regions.
I think the theory is that those are states where Cybertruck is going to do well,
It's
where
going to help. Yeah,
Cybertruck is going to build brand awareness and attention,
I would agree.
um, and that may be more effective than doing a TV ad, but we'll see. Um, sorry, I just want to close on this segment if
Right,
we
right, right.
call it that with. I just want I think people need to be aware of STEDs,
Yes.
smarter than Elon diseases.
Right.
They do seem to be spreading. We haven't discovered a vaccine yet. There's no condom that I know of that you can wear or pill that you can take that will prevent the spread of STEDs. The only thing I can say is that if you start thinking that if you see somebody who's talking and it sounds like they think they're smarter than Elon, you should recognize they probably have an STED. And if you start thinking yourself that, geez, those guys at Tesla don't know what they're doing, Elon doesn't know what he's doing, you may have contracted an STED. And for therapy, I recommend watching a few James Douma videos with James Douma, or follow Jason DeBolt on X. There's certain voices, Dave Lee, follow Dave Lee. There's certain voices that I might say myself or Stephen Mark Ryan or Randy.
Oh, me.
I think there's a few voices that understand that Elon's pretty smart and maybe we're not smarter than him.
Well, I wrote a whole book about it. The Elon Musk method was all about
Yeah,
how smart Elon is. So absolutely, and most of the guys you're talking about tend to be, not in all cases, but most of them seem to be emotionally driven. And when the stock drops below a certain level and they see that their net worth has dropped, they get emotionally sad. And so
yeah.
they have to strike out at somebody. Well, you know what? We've been going for almost an hour here. I think we're going to wrap this particular episode right now. I do want to let people know that yesterday Brian Wong was on at about this same time, and you should go back and look at that video. We took a look at a very different way of looking at what's going to be happening in the bot business, the robot business. And I think that Warren and I are going to talk about that on a separate video. The big guys, the Magnificent Seven, are basically at this point all looking at bots in one way or the other, either supplying parts or our software or whatever, or they are going to be in the bot business right across the line. So all these small companies that are now being talked about, that Cern Basher and Scott Walter put up a list of the 15 or so companies that are out there. They're all going to be absorbed, purchased, supported by, or somehow part of these.
Can I just touch on that just really quick? I'm not going to comment on the Chinese companies because I don't know enough about them, but you'll see startup companies that say they've got a bot, and the Figures bot looks an awful lot like Optimus, or at least a previous version of Optimus. There's one called Sanctuary AI, and of course they have AI in their name. And my take on it is that all these companies said, hey, Tesla's doing something. let's go to investors and say we're making something like what Tesla's making, and we'll throw AI on our name or our platform, and we'll be able to get foolish investors to give us money, even though we have no hope of getting there. And they have no hope of getting there because you need, in order to solve AI in terms of a bot, you need to manufacture in very, very large volume. You need to generate large volumes of data, and you need to have really, really a lot of computing power to be able to train based on the data you've generated. And maybe XPeng, maybe some of the Chinese companies are going to have that, but these startups don't have it. They don't have what they need. And I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think it's very unlikely. It's much more likely. And I looked at figures, who we are, who the leadership team was, and 4 of them had no engineering experience, that weren't engineers at all. And one of them, the lead engineer, was like an academic who looked like he was wearing a Star Trek uniform. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to say it's impossible, but that just didn't look good to me. So I just wanted to touch on that. Like I'm concerned about that I think people buy the story. They bought the story on Aptera, they bought the story on Lucid Motors, they bought the story. You got to have some critical thinking, you've got to do some due diligence, and you got to ask yourself the question, okay, solar cells on the outside of the car, does that really make sense? No, it doesn't. I don't care how many times you tell yourself it makes sense. There's not enough surface area on the car to generate, and the angles are all wrong. But people buy, oh, solar on a car, that's awesome. I love that.
Right.
So I'm glad you love it, but it doesn't make practical sense. So I hope people will be careful when they see these investment opportunities and say, wait a minute, do they really have what it takes?
Right. Hey, Warren, thanks you as always for jumping on, and and good luck with all of that romancing in Thailand. And I'm sure we'll hear more about that in the future, either on your channel or mine, or maybe both. Anyway, thanks so much for being on. And to all of you out there, it has been great talking to you.